All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Priya, and I'm the Alumni Engagement Manager here at King's. In today's webinar, How to Get a Job in the Big Four and Other Professional Services Firms, it's part of a larger series of how-to webinars specifically created for students and alumni who are in the early stages of career development. You can find past webinars on our KCL Alumni YouTube channel, and also look out for future how-to webinars in your monthly e-news and on King's Connect. And you can also use King's Connect to connect with students and alumni and grow your network. So without further ado, I will hand things over to the chair of this webinar, Andrew Wright, Head of Employer Engagement for King's College London.
Thank you very much, Priya. It's great to have so many people logged on today. I hope we're going to have a really fantastic discussion. In today's webinar, our panelists are going to be discussing their experiences of both applying and working in the Big Four, those organisations that to us are known as sort of PwC, KPMG, EY and Deloitte, but also other professional services firms as well. Some of the challenges they faced and the support they've received, both at the start of their career and for their future progression as well. Before we get underway, I'm just going to take a moment to underline some of the other support that's available from King's College London, particularly from King's Careers and Employability. So as Priya said, my name's Andrew Wright. I head up employer engagement here. And that means I look after a team who manage our relationships with all sorts of organisations around the world, which we're incredibly fortunate to have access to. As alumni of King's, you still have access to the whole range of support from King's Careers and Employability up to 2 years after you've completed your studies. So that includes our Strand Career Centre in our new Bush House home. It includes our websites and also access to our own portal, King's Career Connect, not to be confused with the mentoring portal, King's Connect. There you'll find our vacancy board, our events program, and also be able to search a whole range of employer profiles to help connect and decide on your future career as well. Alongside all of this, we've got a range of other support and exclusive subscriptions as well to help you with interview technique, psychometric tests, and all of those are available to you as an alumni by logging in to that platform up to 2 years out. So what I'm going to do is also reiterate the support from King's Connect as well. It's a fantastic mentoring platform. There is a whole range of opportunities on there for a lot of our alumni to find mentors across the world. I know there's a huge amount of work from our friends and colleagues and alumni in making sure that that connection across our alumni community is as strong as it can be, supporting you, not just in that first career move, but in a future kind of career progression that you might be doing wherever you are in the world. Throughout this webinar, we're going to be making use of a question and answer. What we're going to do is try and collate a lot of those together. So what I'd ask you to do is to submit those throughout the discussion, and then we'll be collating those and kind of putting those across at the end of the webinar as well. So hopefully we'll have time to answer some of those questions. If we don't get time to answer those questions, what we're going to do is take those and we'll share, I think, the details of some of our panelists today with you, and you'll be able to follow up with them as well direct also. So that's enough from me. Without further ado, I'm going to get our speakers to introduce themselves. I'm going to start with Avni, if that's okay. Over to you.
Sure, Andrew, that's fine. My name's Avni Mashru. I'm a director at PwC. I've been with PwC since 2000, so quite some time. And like many of you, I'm sure, are thinking about, I did join PwC through the graduate scheme and then have moved around several times in several roles and stayed with the firm ever since.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Can I ask Emilia to introduce yourself, your name, what you studied, and a brief summary?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Emilia. I graduated in 2018 from the MSc in International Management. I currently work in KPMG as capital markets executive. I've joined only about a year ago. I didn't join on a graduate scheme like Avni did, but I did join directly as an experienced hire since I had about 2.5 years of professional experience before.
Fantastic. And with further ado, can I ask Tony to do the same, please, as well?
Sure thing. Good morning, everyone. I studied intelligence and international security, graduated back in 2009 with a master's. So I'm a manager in strategy and operations with Deloitte Consulting now. So I've been here for about 3.5 years. I focus mostly on large organizational transformation and aerospace and defense in particular. I came in actually as a campus hire from another school. So I went to King's, spent some time in the U.S. intelligence community, and then went to University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill for my my MBA. So came out of the campus system, but have great experience on both sides for recruiting experienced hires. So pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, all of you, for joining us today. Let's start off with hearing about your experience with the application and recruitment process. And this is a really important aspect for not just our current students, but recent alumni as well, or indeed those at a kind of more experienced higher level. How would you advise students to go about preparing for that process, bearing in mind this kind of constant changing atmosphere that we're experiencing in assessment and recruitment at the moment? Emilia, if I can ask you to kick off and think about how did you prepare? What made the difference, do you think, in your own application? And what advice would you pass on to some of our recent alumni?
Sure. So I think it's really important to remember, and I say this to everyone who ever asks me how to get a job in the Big Four or in any large company for that matter. I think, as cheesy as it might sound, it's really important to just be your own self. I know a lot of people, even when I've been to some alumni events at King's, they've asked me what they should be saying, how they should communicate, and I just tell them, you know what, let your real personality shine through, because I think according to statistics, about 70% of people are hired for their personality rather than their skill set, because skill set is something that you can learn, but who you are, you can't really learn that. So I think a lot of companies these days go for the cultural fit. And I think it's really important to get that across in your application as well. So my most important advice probably would be make your application as customized as you can to the company, but also explain and demonstrate how the role requirements are actually fit not only to your professional and academic experience, but also who you are as a person, because people want to work with someone they actually like. So show them who you really are without any pretending, and I think that's going to really help you. So I think that was something that I found quite useful, because firstly, you try to kind of tailor your application to something that the recruiter would like to read, or what they would like to see. But actually, it's really important to ask yourself, what is it that you really want to do in the first place, and then let that ambition drive you through the process. That's what I would say.
Fantastic. Some really good advice there. Tony, can I throw the same question across to you?
Sure, and I have two things to bring up, and they're probably corollaries of what Emilia's already talked about. So as I was saying, I came in through the business school sort of campus process, so that's fairly structured. On the U.S. side of the house, it's probably the same in internationally as well. That said, the components I think are the same for whether you're coming out of as an experienced hire or out of other campus programs. So the first for me is sort of prepare a good story, and that's the authenticity that Emilia just mentioned. But consulting can sometimes sound like a catch-all. So we go to the table and say, I want to learn about a lot of things, I want to do a lot of projects. But if you're not articulate about the very specific things that you want to do, it becomes challenging to sort of connect your experience to why we should have you in the firm. So I spent a lot of time trying to be deliberate about why I wanted to do consulting, how I would fit into that specific firm. In my case, it's Deloitte. How my background sort of reflected the right skills and interests I wanted to convey. Again, a lot of what Emilia was already talking about. So my advice there is really spend time reflecting on your resume, your experience, your knowledge, and then make sure you can tie to that direct connection to the career you want, not necessarily the firm at first, but the career. And the second thing is understanding the firm specifically, same thing that Emilia just mentioned. So each firm is different. It's not entirely clear that that's the case when you're looking from the outside, but the closer you get in, you'll see not only offering differences in sort of services and industries, but also the character of the firm. And so what I try to do is find people in my network, alumni connections and so on, and then try to be knowledgeable about the services, the offerings, and that's my advice to you as well. So it's kind of a little bit easier to go out and find specific offerings, right? You can look in the website, you can look at, you can talk to alumni, which I hope you do after this call. This is part of the reason I participate in these things. And then on the second side, to learn the company culture, there's things like Fishbowl, LinkedIn, Vault, Glassdoor. There's a number of different resources that you can start to poke around behind the curtain a little bit, and I think that's equally important.
Fantastic. Just to say, and I'd echo a lot of that advice on the kind of commercial awareness of the difference between the Big Four and other professional services firms. One of the bits of advice we give to students and recent graduates is if you put the name in, but you could insert their competitor in your application, it's not good enough. That's not specific enough. And I think all that advice there in terms of those networks and some of those platforms, King's itself has a subscription to Vault through the library. So if you have access to the library, that's something you might want to pay attention to. Avni, can I ask you the same question?
Yeah, I mean, I would echo a lot of what Tony and Amelia said. It's probably the same for PwC. I would say there is a lot on our website. So do make the most of that, particularly around the psychometric testing, which when I did it was actually done in person, but we now do a lot of that online, and you can actually do test versions of that on our website. So talking to our sort of recruitment team before I came on here, they highly recommend that. And their one top tip was treat that bit like an exam. Mm-hmm. So in the same way you prepare for exams, you can prepare for those tests, and you do need to sort of think about what is the test and what is it trying to what kind of skill am I trying to use. Definitely be yourself. The reason why that is important, and you sort of might worry, well, what if that means I don't get in? Well, actually, if that's what it is, then perhaps that isn't the firm for you. And I would say, I didn't get to EY, I didn't get into KPMG, and that just, when I now reflect on it, it's probably because that wasn't the right place for me, and PwC for me was the place that I felt my personality did fit. The other thing, just to add in, kind of, get to know what the firm is and what the firm offers. If you're planning to go down the audit route, which I know is a very popular route, obviously there are other routes in, but a very popular route is through the audit graduate program. Be aware that there is a lot of change going around the audit practice, and a lot of it is coming out of a lot, these big business failures that are happening. There's a lot of scrutiny on audit. All of the firms have different approaches to how they are going to address that challenge. So PwC has split off its audit practice into a separate line of service in the firm. So depending on what firm you're applying to, if you are going for audit, in the UK, certainly, do have a look on the website, do see what the firms have put out around that subject, because I would guarantee you that in any interview around audit, that question would come up, and what you think of that and what you think should happen will definitely come up, in the environment that we're in today.
Fantastic. And I think, certainly from my perspective, dealing with the Big Four here at King's, it's hardly a day that goes by where there's not some newsworthy item about another change in Big Four or professional services around the way things are happening. And I think that's really good advice for recent alumni and students to be thinking about. Actually, they've got this in front of them, they just need to be using it a bit more effectively. Thinking about on that theme, I guess my next question is about your own career journeys and also what's changed over the last few years since you've been in a professional services environment. So could you share sort of what your role is now a little bit, what your career journey's been from kind of graduating and then to where you are now, and what's changed, I guess, within the firm? So picking up on some of those areas we were just talking about audit, but also I know the Big Four are launching sort of legal practices and other elements and restructuring a lot of what they do internally as well. And I wonder how much any of that is playing on your individual job roles. So we've got about 10 minutes to cover this, so 3-4 minutes each, hopefully. Tony, can I kick off with you this time?
Yeah, sure. Great question here. I, as I referenced in the beginning, I'm a manager now, which means I sort of run projects and usually have sort of teams of teams underneath me. So what I'm currently working on, I'm leading a project to build sort of a digital command center for the leaders of a fighter jet platform. As I told you, I'm an aerospace industry professional. So there are a lot of cost and performance expectations that are kind of difficult to see and manage, and we're trying to create some transparency for them through these dashboards to help them make strategic decisions. But the journey for us is, as in a way it's structured, in a way it's unstructured. The structured part is, you come out of business school to spend 2 years as a senior consultant where you learn your core skills and you spend a lot of different, you spend your time in different industries, different functions and whatnot, and then move into this manager role, in my case about a year ago, to learn a little bit more about how to lead those projects. So that first couple of years looked a lot different than it does now. I spent time in financial services consulting. I spent time working for a medical device client. I spent time actually consulting for an audit practice, which is, directly to the question, if the audit world is transforming, how can we help the audit practice transform itself as well? So my journey has been great in that manner because, again, when you think about consulting, you think about different types of experiences, different skill sets you can develop, and I've been thrilled with that along the way. In manner of how it's changed, we, just like some of the other folks representing on the call here, Deloitte has an audit practice, a consulting practice, an advisory practice, and a tax practice, which all influence one another. So there are certain clients we cannot consult for because we audit. That give and take is always changing to me. That's one of the kind of exciting parts about the firm is I sit in the office next to the folks who are doing audit work, but we have to think about how the practice aligns together. And the second element is the way that we go to market, which is a fancy way of just saying how we sell our services, has become much more interlinked. When I started, even a couple of years ago, we could sell a strategy project. We could sell an operations transformation project. We could do just an M&A project. That's not even the case 3 years later, where now if we're doing a merger, we are bringing our transformation people to the table on day one to think about what the operating model looks like in a little while. We're bringing strategy people to the table to think about what the 5-year plan is after you've merged. We're bringing the technology team to the table because there's undoubtedly going to be some pretty significant ERP systems or things that we've got to think about. So much more integration. It's been great for me because I get to learn the technology practice and learn about data and things that I otherwise wouldn't. But lots of change, but it makes it a fun career.
Tony, my next question was about to be, are you doing what you expected to be doing? And I think you've sort of answered that in saying, in realistic terms, no, because things are moving so much. Can I just pick up on your position now as a manager? How have you found the professional development opportunities in order to get you into that position within your firm at Deloitte?
Sure, great. Another great question. Thanks. So I'm doing what I want in terms of I was able to carve my own path. I knew that I had skills to go get first, but when I got to this level, I wanted to be managing projects for big defense contractors, which is what I do now. In terms of professional development, that's the most useful way. It's the most challenging and rewarding part of the career to sort of take on roles you never expected to take, I think. So you have these prominent leadership roles in accounts that 3 weeks ago you'd never even heard of the product. And I think that's, if you're uncomfortable, you're learning, and that's definitely what we have. It means you're learning something new every day. But to answer your question, that's the expectation, that you can handle ambiguity and that you embrace that ambiguity, and that's the main thrust of professional development for us.
Fantastic. And I think that's echoed certainly by our conversations with all sorts of graduate recruiters here at King's, but particularly within the professional services sphere. This tolerance for ambiguity and change and the resilience within that are two really, really key skills that students are, or the employers are telling us that students and alumni need. Can I throw that question to Avni? So your career journey, how you got to where you are, and perhaps any advice for students today?
Yeah, I mean, I've had, 19 years in PwC, and I think if I think back to when I joined, I thought, I didn't actually know what an audit was, if I'm honest. I was not sure what I signed up for. So don't worry if you're not really sure what any of this stuff is. I just thought I would get qualified and I'd leave and I'd do something else. And I have to say, on reflection, I have done things that I never thought I would ever do. I stayed within the audit practice about 4 or 5 years. I then moved into essentially our technical function, giving accounting advice. But over the years, that's evolved to helping our own teams with difficult accounting questions and actually going out to some of our biggest clients to help them with some really, difficult and complex accounting decisions. That role's taken me to spending 3 years in the US. So I lived in New York for 3 years, which was a brilliant experience. And I would say for any of the large firms, and if I think of everyone that I joined with, I would say about 75% of them did an international placement somewhere. And that's just through not being forced to in MA, obviously, but taking advantage of that opportunity. And I think that's a great opportunity that you have working for a large sort of network firm. If I think of what's changed, probably a lot. When I joined, you couldn't just connect to the internet. You had to dial up through a fax machine. I remember the days of faxing. So technology certainly has moved on, but I think as sort of Tony mentioned, what we offer has moved. We do pretty much everything these days. We now have quite a big legal practice. We do a lot around sustainability and climate change. There is pretty much every single role that you could ever think of. And that's partially the reason I think why I've never left. I said to myself I would leave the firm the day I woke up and was miserable about going into work, and I haven't quite hit that day yet. So I certainly think variety has kept me here. And like I said, I wouldn't have expected I'd go to New York. I adjudicated the National Lottery for many years. So I appeared on BBC One quite frequently. That's something I never thought I'd ever do. You know, these opportunities, kind of clients and different experiences just sort of pop up. And a lot of times, I you know, like I said, I probably couldn't even predict what I would do. But I certainly say the breadth of experience is something that is a great thing with any of the big four, really. That is something you'll definitely find.
And Amelia, I know you've had a really interesting career journey, having come into the big four from kind of very different industry in one sense, in hotels. How did that previous experience help you in relation to the changing nature of the big four and professional services?
Sure. So I think it's also maybe a little advice that I would give to other people, which was a challenge for me essentially, was, you know, having worked for Hilton hotels in UAE and then in London, I was always struggling to find out how to reposition myself, you know, because I kind of felt like I had that hotel industry stamp all over my CV. So I think that was quite different. But then once I got into KPMG, I would say that it's always good to leverage on any experience that you have. Within my role in hotels, I was working as a sales manager, so I did a lot of relationship management, a lot of business development. So you develop many soft skills or many soft transferable skills that you can use in any sort of environment later on. Of course, working in a professional firm is a lot different in terms of the company culture than it is in a hotel. Everything is a bit more formal, a bit more sort of more serious, if I may say so. But at the same time, you know, I still go to different events. I still meet people from different departments. I still go to the London Stock Exchange for frequent meetings with investors, for analyst presentations. And then having had the experience of, you know, not being afraid to come up to someone and introduce yourself and talk about your business and talk about how, you know, how you can work together with someone else has been extremely helpful. So I would say, for anyone who has had a different career path and you're thinking of changing, don't ever think that it can be a disadvantage. You know, if you play your cards right, you can really turn it around and show it as a great advantage that you have.
And just thinking about all that experience, are you doing what you expected to be doing at this point?
I think I'm doing a lot more, if I'm honest, because when I was first interviewing for the role, I kind of thought the first year is going to be a lot of learning, which of course it is, a lot of shadowing, a lot of, you know, standing next to someone else speaking and that kind of things. But then as I've been here for a year, through maybe after 6 or 7 months, a lot more responsibilities were given to me. I was given exposure to very high level people, so sort of FTSE 100 C-suite, so CEOs, CFOs, chairman. I was allowed to attend meetings, you know, and sometimes it is just to take notes, for example. But the more I continue my work experience here, the more doors open in a way, and I think that's really the beauty of it, that I'm doing a lot more than I thought I would initially.
Fantastic. Tony, in terms of a bit of advice perhaps that you might give to students or recent alumni today, is there a particular bit of advice that you think sticks with you that's a particular use within professional services?
I think we talked a little bit about it, which is just kind of embracing the ambiguity of the role. I think I came in wanting to have structure from day one, where the plan is going to be for the next 8 weeks we do X, Y, Z, and this is week 1 plan and so forth. And that doesn't happen. That's one side, is just be comfortable with ambiguity. If you want to do that, you'll love professional services. I think that goes for whether it's consulting or audit or otherwise. And Amelia probably mentioned the other part, which is just, you know, you are going to be in places where expectations are high, and so enjoy that journey as well. Just embrace the discomfort of being in front of executives on the first couple of days, and sometimes you have to take notes, but sometimes you're going to be front and center presenting. That kind of rolls into just embrace the discomfort. That's how we learn. That's how we develop professionally. You're not supposed to dread getting out of bed for it. You're supposed to be excited about that kind of task. And if you are, this is probably the right place to be.
There's a great phrase that I'm going to take away from this afternoon that you just mentioned, that embracing that kind of uncertainty. And Avni, in terms of your career that's obviously taken you around the world, do you see differences in how professional services operate between sort of UK, New York, other places that you've been as well? Is there a distinctive cultural shift even within a firm?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So I've, like I said, I've spent a significant amount of time in the US. I've always also been in quite a few of the European sort of firms, Mexico more recently. And I think the one thing, certainly when I joined the US firm, is I just thought, well, it's PwC, it will be the same, and it's English speaking. So, you know, how much difference can there be? And it was massively different. I'd say primarily for the US because the US is a highly regulated environment. It's a highly litigious environment as well. So there is a lot more pressure. And I would say, Tony, you may have a view here, probably more close to it day to day at the moment, but you know, there is a lot more regulation around from the SEC, from the PCAOB on the audit side. And we're starting to get that in the UK, but it does mean that creates a lot more pressure in terms of, certainly for auditors, the work that they do and day-to-day the scrutiny that they're under. So I personally found culturally that creates a difference between how work was approached in the UK versus work was approached in the US. You know, there are definitely different work cultures there, and even though there are similarities because you're under the same umbrella firm, the country that you're in definitely makes a difference. And I've seen that, you know, taking some of the European network firms. I spent a bit of time in Greece and Cyprus. And again, that, you know, when you get to the smaller network firms, again, the culture changes not only with a different country, but actually because you've got a smaller firm and you've got, you know, everyone's on one floor and everyone knows everyone, and that creates a difference as well. For me, I just find it really fascinating. Every time I go to a different network firm, it's amazing that we're all part of this same umbrella, but actually that we're so different. You know, I think the furthest away I've probably been is Australia and New Zealand. I've seen both our firms there. And again, it's, you know, slightly different culture. But a lot of it plays through kind of the local environment, but also the regulatory environment definitely does make a difference.
Fantastic. And perhaps even if you're not fortunate enough to have those opportunities to kind of travel around in different networked offices, do you find yourself even on a day-to-day basis doing work that is sort of cross-transactional in different geographies?
Yes.
We find a lot that students and alumni tell us that one of the things they're really interested in is absolutely the opportunity to travel, which the Big Four and professional services gives you, but actually just delivering on work that has an international flavour to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if I think of certainly, and this will be the case for all the firms, FTSE 100 clients for the most part are multinational. So if you join certainly the larger practices, say in London or even elsewhere, we've distributed our work quite far now, but you know, you will automatically be dealing with all these countries around the world, even without traveling there. So I think, if I recall right, probably from almost day one, really, I got put on a job that was a multinational client, and all of a sudden you're looking at group audit instructions that are going out to several different offices, and you've got to deal with, you know, several different countries. So yeah, certainly those opportunities are definitely there.
I'm keen, Tony, to get you to kind of pick up on this, obviously, from an American perspective at the moment. Is there anything you wanted to add to some of the things that Avni's been saying?
I feel like we have the same, so I think it's a great perspective there, Avni. We are similarly kind of a loose federation of firms that roll up to the global Deloitte, and so obviously we have to deliver the same level of service. But I've spent time with our Dutch firm, with our UK practice, and actually was the chief of staff for a partner who sat in Zurich, leading our sort of global digital transformation practice for a while. So we're in the same boat. You know, there's global opportunity and there's global range. One of the interesting features, and I assume the other firms have this too, is the U.S. firm is directly supported by this relatively enormous but extraordinarily talented India-based delivery center. So we call it USI. It's in Hyderabad and a few other places as well. So we have, I have a US only client, but in most circumstances, if you have other types of delivery center type work to do, we have direct support from India. You're on the phone at 10 o'clock at night to set them up for success. They deliver something the next morning. They're an integral part of your team. I really enjoy that about our firm. You're quite literally working around the clock to make sure that you're delivering what you need to. But basically the same premise, loose federation of firms that deliver different types of work in different circumstances locally, but all sort of that big 300,000 practitioners we have globally.
Fantastic. I know we've got some questions pending, which is great. I'm going to try and come to those in a minute, but if I may, I'm going to take a liberty and just put one more question in for all of you, which I'm going to ask Amelia to kick off with, if that's all right, which is, to what extent do you feel you use your disciplinary or subject knowledge and what you studied within your day-to-day sort of career now?
So for me personally, I feel that my decision to take, what's it called, an additional module or a selective module. So in the second half of the year, we were allowed to pick a few modules, and I decided to challenge myself, as one does, and pick financial analysis and reporting. And first it was quite difficult because we had only done the small accounting module, and that was quite basic. But then I was quite happy because we did a large valuation project on Shell, and when I was interviewing and then in my actual job, we did deal a lot with company valuation. So having the ability to be able to explain how you value a company without actually having had any work experience was very useful, and that's something that I learned to do at King's. And then, of course, because of that, I was also able to understand the capital markets setting, the equity markets, working with investors, things like that a lot better. And I think it also gave me a really good foundation to continue professional education here with KPMG. So I would say it was definitely extremely useful, especially the finance module, which maybe sometimes can scare a few people, but I would say it's always very good to have a basic understanding of finance and accountancy, regardless of the field you go into.
Fantastic, great advice there. Avni, is there anything you'd like to add to that from your own subject experience?
Yeah, I did business management, and I think I've pretty much used, apart from maybe econometrics, I don't think I ever used that again. But actually the marketing stuff was really, really useful. One of my clients very early on was Mars. And I actually ended up having to audit their marketing spend, and they've got a really complex set of activities that go on. But actually some of the stuff around strategies around marketing just came in really handy. So I think with audit in particular, because you've got to understand the entire business, the accounting piece, you get a lot of training in, clearly, but everything else kind of is learnt on the job. So I found that the fact that I'd done a business management degree and had a bit of an understanding of everything else that goes on in a business, that was really, really helpful, because no one really sort of teaches you that in the way. You just pick that up as you go along.
And Tony, same question to you.
Sure, probably three things for me. So one is, war studies was sort of foundational to the career I have, not moving to the U.S. Defense Department and then moving into consulting, but obviously this is my area of expertise today. So that's a lot of just the foundational disciplinary abilities I had. And the other sort of more functional things are, all source assessments, I'll call it. So basically being able to work from a hypothesis-based approach, finding and evaluating evidence and really putting that into words. And that third thing, that's the segue, is writing and communicating in the appropriate manner, which I think improved leaps and bounds over my time at King's a few years back. But it's something that, even if you're not in a business program, that's a lot of the skill set that you can bring. Can you find the right evidence? Can you make a good, strong business case? Can you communicate that well? Those elements come regardless of your discipline, and that's something that you can absolutely sell from your experience.
Wonderful. What some fantastic experiences there. I've got a flurry of questions coming in. So if it's okay, I'm going to start going through some of those. I'm going to try and put them together into some different themes. So one of the questions that's come in is particularly around the recruitment process. What elements should my CV include to make it look better? I appreciate for some of you it might be a little while since you did that, but who might want to kick off on that? Amelia?
Sure. So I think, as I said at the beginning, I haven't seen this person's CV, but I'm sure it already looks very good. I would say try to add as much experience that you have in that field, even if you haven't, let's say you want to go into marketing, right? And then you're just graduating, you don't have any experience, I would say try to add at least something that shows your interest in that field. So for example, maybe you have an Instagram profile that has 2,000 followers, maybe you have attended a marketing conference, maybe you have your own small business and you found creative ways to market it. So anything that shows why you're interested in something and what you have done to actually get a head start into that field can be extremely valuable.
Fantastic. Avni, same question.
I think for me, if when I'm looking, I guess probably looking at the other way, when I'm looking at people's CVs, I would, the academic piece, don't spend a lot, be very factual on that. We just, you know, from a PwC perspective, you know, degree, we just want to see you've got a 2-1 and we move on very quickly. So I think, given obviously where you are, you know, in your academic lives, obviously academics may well have made up a big portion of that. As an employer, what we're looking for, as kind of Amelia hinted to, is why you're interested in coming into the field that you're applying for and the relevant experience you have. So even if you might have had, you know, a Saturday job in a retail shop, setting out what skills, you know, if you were a team leader, that actually a lot of the skills that you learn just leading a group of people in a shop are very relevant to leading an engagement team when you're delivering a client piece of work. So don't dismiss what you might have done in the past as being irrelevant. I mean, I sold vacuum cleaners door to door, and if I'm honest, I think that's how I got my job at PwC, just because I just articulated and said, well, this is how it helped, you know, this is how it's helped me improve my skills. And actually, it was the only reason I know that is the person that interviewed me when I joined the firm came up to me and said, "You're the vacuum cleaner girl. I remember you were the one person that stood out in all the interviews I did." So don't dismiss small bits of experience thinking it's not going to be relevant for what you're doing.
We've actually got a number of questions coming in on I think precisely that, which is, you know, how do you showcase experience? Do you need an internship or existing work experience within the professional services? I think it sounds like from what you've just been saying.
No, and I would say I did apply for an internship and I didn't get, they're very competitive. I didn't get a place. That did not stop me in any way from getting a job. So don't worry about that.
Fantastic. Tony, I know you're in a very different sort of space, I guess, in one sense, in the US, but are there any specific differences that you might suggest alumni or students make to their CVs and applications, particularly in that US framing?
There are a few, and Avni, that's a great story, by the way. Great, thanks for sharing. There's probably three, and hopefully these are applicable globally. So I think the first is if you can show analytical skills, that's the thing that we're tending to look more toward with the younger folks that come in. It's probably data-based. If you have coding skills, that's great, you know, but you don't need them for sure. But if there's any analytical things that you can show, even if it's some project work, as we were talking about, that's kind of what we are looking for a little bit. But second is I have a similar story as Avni's for somebody I interviewed, always looking for improvement. So I had a young man interviewing for a summer internship who had been a lifeguard, and he's competing against folks who, you know, had worked at a private equity firm, which is too young to do that, but that's fine. You know, intern here or intern in an investment bank. And he talked in a very structured way about, I was the lead lifeguard and I had 4 people and I didn't feel like the shifts were optimized. And so I did this. And I was so wildly impressed by the fact that he didn't just sit in his lifeguard chair and take the paycheck. He wanted to look for improvement opportunities. And so that's the second is always, if you can show that even if you're sitting at the library desk and checking books, you are looking for different ways to do business. That's a huge indicator. And the third one, which I think is applicable, is if you can show impact. I see a lot of CVs that show, I've done X, and I don't see and so the result is Y. And Andrew, I'm sure you focus a lot on that, helping folks think about the impact as well. But give us deliberate numbers or give us scale or something that we can get our arms around the story. That's the way that I want to look at it. Even if it's, you know, I created this digital digest and it you know, influenced the decision-making of 3 senior executives, perfect. I at least have a scale of your impact. I at least have something I can kind of root your story to.
I'd agree with that completely, Tony. I think quantifying that experience or quantifying your skills are really important. So exactly that, you know, if you've done a particular piece of work, how long was it? How many people did you do it for? You know, what was the market value of something? Or how much did you raise in a particular setting? Or, you know, all these kind of things are really, really valuable to a potential employer. We've got a range of questions coming through on the graduate schemes and opportunities as well. So Emilia, perhaps if I can ask you, I'm not sure how much of this you'll be aware of from your HR teams. What are the types of opportunities that might be available to students and alumni in terms of different graduate schemes, internships, etc.?
So I know that there are, we have the summer internships available, but I wouldn't really know anything about the application, I'm afraid. And then of course we have the graduate schemes in all of our service lines. I think the applications are probably closing fairly soon, if not yet. So it's something that, one should look into the following year, but that's something I know definitely. I mean, one of my colleagues did the audit graduate scheme, and now he works with me, and yeah, he told me it was great experience, but that's really as much as I can tell. I wouldn't really know anything on the duration. So yeah, sorry.
I would say quickly chip in for PwC. I would go on the website. There are opportunities at every single year. I did ask my recruitment team this one. There are opportunities at every single year level. And I believe, if I'm still right, audit applications are open year round. So there's lots of opportunities.
There absolutely are. I'm just going to chime in here a little bit to say exactly that point. A lot of the Big Four, particularly in the UK context, and I'm not quite sure how this transpires globally because every geography will be slightly different. Most applications are now much more on a rolling basis. So many graduates and interns every single year, the Big Four and professional services in general, that actually you'll find different opportunities coming up throughout the year. And there's a few questions coming in on the kind of levels of experience you might need or what year of study. There are opportunities for first years in terms of Spring Insight Weeks and open days, many of which will be advertised on King's Career Connect. And as we say on the firm's own website, there are internships, there are placement years, which will be applicable to some of our students. And obviously there's graduate opportunities as well as experienced hire opportunities. Avni, there's a question about the hidden job market that's come in. So those things that perhaps might not be advertised on a website, maybe thinking more about that kind of lateral hiring. Do you think those are important in getting a job in the Big Four?
I saw that question. I wasn't quite sure what was meant by hidden job market.
So
there's not a hidden market that I'm aware of.
Maybe making speculative applications, approaching particular parts of a firm when there might not necessarily be a role that's...
Right, okay. I see what you mean. In all honesty, that obviously does happen. What happens with that is people just get routed right back round to our website. So it isn't often the case that we sort of hire sort of by a back route. The only time that happens, it tends to be with people that have worked with the firm before. So we've got what we call a flexible talent network now, in that we take people, and this is more experienced hires. And again, this is all on our website. We take people at all different levels, all different durations of contract, depending on our business need. And, I have personally recruited someone that used to work with me through that network. It did end up having to go through the formal PwC recruitment process. So I'd say for PwC, certainly there isn't a hidden market as such, because things always get routed back around to the formal route. So we do like to keep a track of, obviously where we're hiring, what opportunities there are. So I would say that is your best option for getting certainly a job at PwC, and don't be worried that you're missing a hidden opportunity somewhere or a back route that you didn't know about.
Tony, is there anything you'd like to add on that question, maybe around the kind of speculative market from a US perspective or a non-UK perspective?
The only things I'll add are we are the same as Avni was talking through. The only minor difference is if you have a partner referral, there's a separate sort of path for that. So if you happen to have a Deloitte partner in your network, or a principal as we call them now, that's outside of the normal channels. So if you have that, by all means go to it. But Avni makes a good point in sort of the follow-up to this discussion, Andrew. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but the thing that we can do to help out is try to refer you, but ultimately we need, well, at least on the Deloitte side, we need to have a very specific job to which we can refer you, and ultimately we will refer you. That's kind of the extent of what we can do. We can help you prepare, we can get you to the table, but ultimately we do need that posting ID, so it's probably worth following up, preempting a little bit of the discussion we probably will have with some of you after this.
Fantastic. There's a whole range of questions suddenly flowing in. I'm going to just try and see if I can quickly nip a few in the bud, because I think some of them are particularly around kind of the application process, how to succeed at online tests, etc. Online tests are a huge wealth of different things depending on firms. And I know even within the Big Four, there's a range of opportunities from situational judgment through to numerical. In a King's perspective, we have a subscription to something called Assessment Day. And you might want to have a look on our King's Careers and Employability pages, those of you who are tuning in on this webinar. You have access to those through Keats, and there's a login in there that you can log in and actually test out some of the practice interviews itself. There's also a question around, I think I mentioned earlier, about access to Vault, which was something that Tony mentioned, which you can access through the King's Library catalogue. So if you go to the King's Library website, type in Vault, and if you've got the correct credentials, you'll be able to log in and access everything in there. I'm conscious of time, so there's going to be a few questions unfortunately we don't get a chance to get to at this point, but we'll certainly try and collate those and do follow up with our panelists afterwards. So that really brings this afternoon to a close. If it's inspired you, this webinar, to kind of apply for one of the Big Four or any of the professional services firms, bear in mind that a number of them will be on campus over the next few weeks. Indeed, I know some of you already have been your colleagues in HR and graduate recruitment as well. Make sure you come and visit us in King's Careers and Employability. Have a look at our Keats pages online. They're also accessible to recent alumni as well. You can get the password for those through King's Career Connect. And to find out more about the services that are on offer from King's Careers and Employability, have a look on our website, which is www.kcl.ac.uk/careers. I'm going to hand back over to Priya to close off this afternoon's discussion.
Great, thank you, Andrew. So I'd like to close this webinar with a huge thank you to all of our panelists who've kindly given their time today to share their wisdom and experience with us. I hope that you've all found this webinar really helpful. If you do have any follow-up questions, all of our panelists have agreed to be contacted both through our King's Connect platform and also through LinkedIn. And I'd also like to reiterate that King's Connect is a fantastic way to get in touch with other alumni who are also working in Big Four and other professional services firms if you have any specific questions about those ones. If you had any more general questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch with the Alumni Office by emailing us at forever@kcl.ac.uk or through our social media channels at KCL Alumni. And if you'd like to share this webinar with your networks, don't forget to use #ForeverKings. So once again, a big thank you to our panelists and a big thank you to you all for listening. Thank you, bye.
Goodbye.
Thanks.